Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Changepreneurs, conversations that spark change. I'm your host for today, Roshni Radhakrishnan, an emotional intelligence coach for teens, youth, and women. Co hosting with me today is my dear friend Shrish Raj, an experienced leadership and transformation coach. It is always a pleasure sharing the mic with you, Shrish. We are in
Same here.
season
Thank
three.
you.
Hmm. We are in season three, and today we have a guest who I truly admire for her passion and commitment to her work. Goldie Uttamchandani is a coach who has spent more than a decade working across two worlds that don't often get to talk to each other. Teenagers figuring out who they are, and leaders figuring out who they have become. With nearly 2,000 hours of coaching experience across 30 nationalities and three languages, I'm quite certain she'll bring a perspective that is genuinely fresh to our listeners. And as someone who works with young people myself, I'll be honest, I'm as excited to listen to you, Goldie, as I am to host this conversation. So glad you're here. Welcome to Changepreneurs.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. It's such a warm welcome you've given me, and I'm excited to be here too. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Goldie, that's quite a journey you have had so far. But I would like to take you back to the beginning, though. What was the moment you knew coaching was what you were meant to do?
I think we deeply know what we want to be and become, but there's so many layers that get in the way before you're able to really determine with clarity. And I think looking back, in retrospect, I've always been a curious person who enjoys a good conversation. Even as a little girl, I was always curious to be with the adults more than my own age group. So I think it kind of sparked very organically within me. But formally, I recognized this back in 2015, 2016, more or less. I'd been very, close to finishing a book, which was a very personal project that didn't come from any specific, ideology or project planning. It was very organic again. My entire journey has been very organic. And I had a conversation with my brother, who's actually 3 years younger to me, but he's very wise. And he said to me, "Where's this book taking you?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing all these motivational talks at schools and I'm really enjoying having the interactions with students." So he picked out the right words, obviously. And he said, "And what do you want to do with that?" I said, "For now, I'm happy. I'm really enjoying the journey." He said, "Well, I think you should become a coach." He just said that straight out. And I was a little stumped because I firstly have to recognize I did not even know what a coach was. I had always associated coach with someone who looks after a sport, who manages teams. And I was far from that. I wasn't even vaguely inclined into sports. And I said, "That makes no sense. What are you talking about?" He said, "Oh, maybe you haven't understood me properly. Let me send you a few links." And of course, I did see the links he sent me. They were for schools. And I looked and read into what was being offered. And it really resonated with me. And I think the moment I really realized this is who I want to become was when I had my interview at the coaching school with the director of studies. And she said to me, "What makes you stand out from other people?" Which is such a powerful question. But I somehow had the answer for her without hesitation, which was, well, I think I stand out because I like to connect with, young people. And I've known this my whole life because I struggled to connect with my own self when I was growing up. I don't even know where that answer came from, but it came out. And she said, "Welcome to the school." And then I got certified. Yeah.
And this journey, what now almost 10 years, Goldie, how has that changed you as a person? Or has it changed you as a person? That should be the question. That should be the other way around.
Yeah. No, I think I haven't changed. I've just gotten to know myself better. And that's beautiful because self-awareness is so underrated often in a conversation, even just a very quotidian conversation. If you are very self-aware and know yourself well, I think you can add value to yourself, and most importantly, you can add value to others. So I think I always knew who I was, but I've gotten to know her better in the last 10 years, thanks to the skills that I've acquired in becoming a coach. Every year that passes, I recognize that there is something within me that is almost not even tangible, which I refer to as intuition. And I think I've honed into and fine-tuned that intuition at greater lengths over the last 10 years, which has come definitely at a cost many times, because you cannot become intuitive unless you fall, you learn, you give yourself permission to have growth mindset, which is something that took me a while because I recognized the perfectionist in myself. I still am very detail oriented, but I think I'm using that as a strength that adds value to my intuition and not so much as a barrier. So the person is the same. I still connect with the inner child in me regularly. I love having fun. And you can see that in things, the choices I make. I mean, the blue nail polish gives it away, right? Because like she's this 48-year-old woman and she's wearing blue nail polish. It could be referred to as a stereotype. Oh, that's not what she should be doing by many. But I just connect with who I want to be. And I think that's what I've learned, just to be more who I am. Um, and of course, testament to what my mom tells me as well. She gave birth to me and she often says, yeah, you've grown into the same little big Goldie that we always had. Yeah.
That's very interesting, Goldie. Would you like to give us some insights on what you understood about yourself when you say, I got to know myself a little better?
Yeah. This is a very simple example, but it really became a value for me. I remember being at boarding school, maybe at the age of 15 or 16, and I was asked to take up an extracurricular activity, which was a sport. And for some reason, I'd grown up always thinking, I'm not sporty. I'm not somebody who will be good at sports. And if I'm not good at something, I cannot do it. This was my belief. However, I admired it from a distance, always. I enjoyed watching the other girls play netball, hockey, tennis. I loved swimming. I was always a water baby. So I spent long hours in the summers going to the pool. If I could go to the beach, I would do that too. However, there was this belief that was, oh, but you're not good at it. So why are you doing it? What's the point? Until I signed up to tennis very reluctantly, may I add. And my coach, sports tennis coach, was able to, I think, extract from me the passion and the love for the sport. And once he was able to extract that love in me, he said, it's not going to become easy overnight. You have to develop a discipline and a habit, and then you will become good and you will love it even more. And not just from a distance, but being in it. And I think that lesson was not given to me, obviously, in one lesson, because at 15, how much can you even absorb? But he made it playful. He made it fun. He encouraged me. He made me see that I have value. And I think though everyone requires that in their growth, I was specifically more in need of it because I think my own self-love was quite low down on the barometer. But this person was able to recognize she has potential. And when someone can see potential in you, I think that is where the game changes. So I've learned to recognize that my identity is deeply associated with sport. And I have obviously so much to show for it today. I mean, I'm a runner. I do marathons. I compete in triathlons. I cycle and what have you. And not because I have to prove anything to anyone. It's become a part of who I am. It's just my identity. So that's what I've learned back then. And I just played into it. turning that belief into something which was a new belief, which is practice more, you'll become better, and then you'll love it more. Yeah.
Is that what you followed through as you became the coach and became this person today? That's wonderful.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, yeah.
So, Goldie, I wanted to ask you. So, usually teenagers are something adults usually are kind of wary about. And I work with the same age group, and I know whenever I introduce myself as a teenage and youth coach, people say, "Oh, that's the most difficult part. Why did you choose that?" Do you get that a lot? And why did you choose to work with this age group?
I did. I did. When I first had to declare who I'll be working with, again, at coaching school, most of my peers, stemmed from HR or sales. A lot of leadership was emerging there from organizational leadership. And I think I was maybe one, or there was a couple of us who had not really had much leadership experience. Frankly, I had worked obviously for 10 years in a marketing role prior to, certifying as a coach, but it was not by any means middle or higher level management, because I have to say I was also very young when I decided to become a coach compared to the average age here in Spain. So I was, I think, 31. And in Spain here, even till today, if you're in your 30s, by status quo, you're in a job, maybe, in a 9 to 5. And I just decided to sort of, no, that's it. I'm not going to be doing this. And my path is very different. So when I had to declare that I was keen to work with young people, a lot of my peers at the time, obviously, they didn't say anything to me because they hardly knew me. But as we got to know each other, they said, gosh, that's a challenging, firstly, market, because everyone was thinking about money. The course itself was not cheap, as you both know. Getting qualified in coaching is not a cheap affair. Investment is required. So you organically think about, where are the returns here, right? Valid observation. I said, yeah, I know it's going to be tough. Of course, I'm recognizing that. So the next question was, but why? Why teenagers? I said, I think it's because of my own story. And when you have a story behind a reason, it makes everything seem more natural, and it makes sense. And so when there are hurdles and struggles and obstacles with a client, what I always turn back to is my own story, and realize, well, I was not an easy child. I was also probably not the most free-flowing teenager. So why am I, comparing myself, or rather sort of judging this teenager? Should I do ever that? Yeah.
And if you would have to name the biggest challenge when you coach the youngsters, the teenagers, or maybe the young adults, what is the biggest challenge you've faced so far?
From my end, I've often struggled to perhaps think, I can't help this person. And over time, I've realized it's not my story. So I'm not here to help. Let me change the narrative. Let me reframe that. Does this person want to be helped? So that's helped me to overcome that challenge in my personal, reasoning. With the client, I think the challenges I often face, interestingly, are the system itself. The client is ready often. It's the system surrounding the client that is perhaps not as collaborative, not as understanding, not even ready. There are so many people in the system of the client. And when I mean system, I'm talking about educators, parents, mentors, even simple people like their own peers. So the same teenagers they're surrounding themselves with are not contributing to making that client see their potential, because it all comes from who is influencing my client more. And now, today, we all know this, the biggest challenge is the third entity, as I call it, because it's the non-visible but very present. I'm going to use your word, Shrish, omnipresent, which is AI, technology, social media. And I can't compete with that. But I'm not. You see, I'm not competing with that. What I can offer my client is presence, real active presence. And I think that's where a lot of the struggles and challenges get diluted.
Hmm. Very interesting point that you brought in here. Um, I was just so it's a reality that kids that age are more and more approaching AI for to solve all their problems. And you mentioned earlier when you were talking about your swimming story also that at 15 there was so much you could absorb and so much you couldn't when the coach was talking to you. Um, Keeping that in mind, how does this play around that? Do the do that age group really understand the importance of presence?
See, before presence, I have to create connection. And connection requires unconditional trust, which means listening to what they have to say to me. But I can't ask them a question and expect a reply if I'm not also allowing myself to be vulnerable first. So if my coach said to me, you can play tennis and you'll become good, let's do some shots, and I failed the 3 shots, because you are most likely, the probability of succeeding in your first 3 shots is very low if you're a newcomer. What does that do? That brings my morale down. So the way he connected with me was by telling me his own story. And mind you, this man limped. My coach, and I will never forget the visual. He had a disability which he faced from some other situation in life. I think it was an accident. I can't remember very clearly. But it was very obvious that this man had struggled in life, and yet he was coaching people for tennis, and he was a good coach. So I saw his vulnerability come through. And that's when I said, oh, if he can do it, I can do it. So very often in my sessions, the first thing, and this is not just with teenagers, even with leaders who, do leadership sessions, I actually talk about myself. And I say, hi, so let me tell you a little bit about myself. And I actually say my biggest vulnerability is, I say it, I just throw it out there. And then you create presence, because the person sees you and thinks, she's opening up to me. Maybe I'll give her a chance.
Yeah, I'll just take this forward, Goldie. So there was this young adult who I was coaching, and we were in 6th or 7th session, and he had nothing to talk about that particular day, but he had just wanted to come for the conversation. And so I asked him, why is it that your generation doesn't open to us adults? And his reply was something which stayed back with me, is that your generation is already just us, that we are irresponsible, we are lazy, we procrastinate. So it is like, why should we try and explain ourselves? Let us be that only. You've got some experience of this?
Yeah, of course. My own.
No,
So
when you're coaching, yeah.
when I'm coaching, oh yeah. So this happens when the person is coming from a pattern of having been judged. It's done almost implicitly by their own parents, perhaps. Simple things like, oh my God, you've always left your dirty laundry on the floor. When are you going to pick it up? Always. See, what they hear stays, because words are not innocent. if the same thing was said by looking at the data at hand and said, I've noticed you've left your clothes. I don't like seeing a messy home, especially in common spaces. When you have a moment, please pick it up. Tone matters, body language matters. Obviously, words matter. And that teenager who's come into the session and is going to tell me that, what I say to them is, your body language is telling me that you are very defensive about something. Why don't you tell me when was the first time you felt that happened to you? In reply to, you guys are always, you've judged us. Even that teenager has projected, if you think about it. You guys have judged us. You guys, that's like a very broad group of people. So I challenged the same statement. Okay, I hear you've obviously got a core belief that our generation or us lot have judged you. Tell me about the time when you first discovered this. I'm curious to understand, what was the moment you realized this became a core belief for you? And that's where coaching begins.
But what, in your opinion, has changed in this generation, Goldie? We also heard the same things. Probably we all have gone through with our parents telling us, you leave your dirty utensils in your room, you don't pick up your laundry, and so on and so forth. And this is what we are doing to the younger generation. What has changed between the two generations?
Perspective. And I'll tell you what I mean by perspective. I think the three of us can safely say we grew up with parents who were probably more instructive and less autonomous in allowing us to, like how we maybe give our children independent critical thinking possibilities. We were definitely more we had instructive parenting, but what we also had was exposure to other cohorts that were not just our parents or our siblings or our immediate peers. By this, I'm talking about extended families. We very naturally interacted with our grandparents for the most part. I'm not speaking on for the vast majority, but a large number of us had ongoing interactions with, in this case, if I'm a Gen X, with a boomer being someone who's now in their 70s plus. So our grandparents, my grandparents. Well, no, my mum would be a boomer. The silent generation, who are very few left, unfortunately, but we had more interaction with them. And so what that does is you are being very naturally, organically fed stories or perspectives or opinions or viewpoints from people who are of a different age to you, which actually stays, lands. It lands because it makes you think, oh, Granny said this. She said it because she comes from this story, and that's what worked for her. Ah, okay. In the same way, we also had more interactions with people younger than us. So I'm talking about if you were in a joint family. I, for instance, had a lot of interaction with my younger cousins who are almost 10 years younger to me, because I was the eldest generation of that, the child of that generation. My youngest cousin today is 31. I'm 48. But I still have a very meaningful connection with her. Why? Because I spent those years with her. So perspective is very important. It's not because we can't give it to them today. It's just not possible anymore because the nuclear families have grown. So separations have developed for whatever reason, urbanization, having to move abroad for work. Study abroad has become a much bigger phenomenon than it was before. So what happens with that is your ability to make or shape an opinion is limited. Limited to what? To your peers, whatever your mom and dad are telling you at best. Even that authority has diminished because of this third entity that I talk about, and figures of authority have a very different role. I don't want to say there's less human and more AI, but it is very tempting to just ask ChatGPT for that answer. And in 0.5, you have an answer. So that's what's changed for me. We are still dealing with the same teenager, but the stimulus that they are dealing with in their heads is 4 or 5 times greater. And so they have more questions.
Roshni, can I just take this a little forward and then probably, I'm sorry. So I'll just take this conversation forward, which I had with this youngster. And during the conversation, when he was at the receiving end, because Zen Alpha was telling him that you become old. And he was feeling that Zen Alpha was irresponsible. And they are now understanding that a generation before them is not all that bad. So would you still go with the perspective part, or is it something else that has changed?
When someone younger than you tells you you're old, how does that feel? When once upon a time, you thought the person in front of you was old, right? Feeling it in your own skin is the biggest lesson one can ever imagine. Now, if it was in a situation where all those age groups were intertwined on a regular basis, even if it's just on the weekends, you normalize that. So much so that you even earn the respect for the youngest one, because you allow and give yourself permission to learn from Alpha. There's so much to learn from Alpha. My nephew and niece are both Alpha, and I love spending time with them because I don't look at them and think, oh, you're so young, you're such a brat. I can't afford to do that. I think respect is not about age difference. It's about seeing the human for who they are and what they bring to the table.
I just want to expand on what you were saying right now, right? Like when we were children, I think we were seen as this little human who knows nothing. And we are these responsible, the adults felt that they are the responsible ones. They know everything, and the children don't know anything. Like you said about your nephew and niece, surely the children today are aware more about the world itself. If they hear something about a war happening, all they have to do is go and put it on ChatGPT or wherever they
Yeah.
want, and they get all the information if they want to. Whereas when we were growing up, a lot of difficult things we were not told about or we were not given the access to. But the children today are more aware in that sense. They know a lot. You can't say that, just because I am much older than you, I know more about the world than you. That's not always true in many a circumstance. And then, like you said, we are learning so many new things from them because the world is changing so constantly. So the idea of looking at that age group as another set of people rather than an age group is becoming more relevant. What would you like to say about that?
There's one thing to see them as another set of people. So a young Alpha being extremely tech savvy because they're born into, they're not born into tablets, they're born into AI. Let's not forget the difference. There's a slight elevation there, right? So, but the thing is, they're still children who are absorbing all this information, have easy access to whatever they want to. I don't want to say that every 7-8-year-old is using ChatGPT the way we are as adults. I hope not, because it's a lot of information overload. And so the difference is, yes, see them for who they are, but don't forget that their ability to process information that's sensitive and delicate and not easy to digest is the same as when we were little children. So we actually have to have those conversations with them from a perspective where we have answers to give them. When what happened with us was we were told it's like that because it just is. Right? And we said, okay. we did not have access like they do to go and ask for the answer again somewhere else. So in terms of being the adult, I think we are definitely holding a far greater responsibility than even our own parents did to educate ourselves in the way AI is providing information, how is prompting useful, to use it effectively and not destructively. That education, I think, needs to 100% come more as a priority for the adult in order to facilitate that alpha who has been born into it. So it will come naturally to him or her. But you as the older person, we're not born into it. So go learn. And I think every single line of business today is encouraging us to take up AI training. Why? Because it's so important and safe. We are 100% more aware of what damage AI could potentially bring to our critical thinking already than we were when Google came into the picture, like 2 decades ago. It took us longer, no, to understand what impact, or even social media for that matter. When social media first arrived, we were like, oh, Facebook is the best thing that's ever happened in the world. But now we are more weary of AI. Rightly so, because we are seeing the damage that social media has obviously done, and don't have to go far. The news headlines every day are showing us more and more cases. Yeah.
And that makes this age group kind of need more support in today's time. How do you kind of recognize when a person of that age is coachable? And what does coaching actually mean in that particular age group?
Alpha, we're talking about alpha right now, just to be clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The oldest alpha right now is 13, 14 years old. So that is an age group that can and is coachable because they have got this vast capacity biologically to learn about emotional intelligence. They are still work in progress. Like I say, they're in roadworks, but those roadworks, if they are managed well, the cementing and the construction is done correctly, their prefrontal cortex can really have high potential to be extremely emotionally intelligent. Younger than 13 is a bit more tricky because they are still not able to discern between some specific emotions like jealousy. They don't understand yet. They're in the works, but not yet. So what I normally discourage is coaching such young children. And instead, what I do is I invite the parent to get coached because they could be feeling that insecurity or struggle in managing such a young child that they have. And it's not that they can't. Every parent has the best intentions for their child, obviously. And that's the number one premise that every coach who is doing, coaching for parents or teenagers should know. You can't judge any parent, but what they may just be reassured with in the coaching is their own limiting beliefs, their own reminder of their own value system, and how they want to imbibe that into their growing 10 to going on to pre-puberty, puberty years. So coachable kids, 13 and plus, 100%. Below that, it's a bit more tricky. There are exceptions, 100%. And I normally do a discovery call with that young child to see if it's possible through play, through fun. There's different ways of coaching a young child, obviously. And what I pay maximum attention to is the body language, because they are so much online that they themselves forget sometimes what their body is telling them that they are not able to engage with because they're online the whole time. So their interpretation of emotions are emojis. Yeah. And but traditionally they are still the same human that you and I were at 10. So they need to connect with their body language. And I think schools, for example, should do a lot more of this. Just have one-to-one sessions on, we're going to talk about body language today, let's sit in a circle and assess what is that person's tone, language, expression telling you about what you're learning. Because they are very savvy on literacy, emotional literacy, but thanks to their phone. They know what the green, face means. It means it's disgusting. Yes, but how does disgusting look in your body? So those type of workshops, I feel, are much more necessary with Alpha, believe it or not, than even with Gen Z.
So I have two questions. Actually, I had just one, then something came up to me right now. So one question is, do you think the present generation is less resilient than what we were at their age?
Yes, they are. And that is for two reasons. One, because they have access to instant gratification in a much more readily available manner. Again, through no fault of their own, obviously. It's what it is. The world is, it's easy to order food online and not have to look in the fridge and think, what can I make from a carrot, a potato, and a piece of chicken? Right? Oh, it's fine. I'll just order in. That's what I'm talking about. You take their phones away from them and ask them to have some fun just in the four walls of their room with no access to Wi-Fi, they'll struggle a little bit. On the other hand, they are also very resilient because they are quick thinkers when it comes to solution finding using tech, which let's not undermine the power of tech and how useful it is for certain situations. So if we're talking about resilience when it comes to critical thinking and survival, I think they need some work and help on that. It's work in progress, let's put it that way. They can improve more. When it comes to being quick thinkers, quick decision making, fast solutions, which is what the world is requiring in many situations today, they are 100% on top of their game. And they will find you a route to navigate if you're lost somewhere in seconds. Like, no, okay, let's not take this route, but because I know how to go about it another way. This app is telling me, let's do it this way. Yeah. That's
Okay.
how I would discern resilience.
Okay. So I won't, I don't 100% agree with the last part of it, but
Okay.
because then you are dependent on a third party without using your own intelligence. Earlier, we used to find ways and using our intelligence, using our instinct. So when we are going readily into an app, our instinct gets lost. And it all creates a lot of emotional fragility in a person, which is actually we are seeing in the current generation.
Yeah. No, I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. And I don't disagree with you. What I was trying to specifically say was, we cannot undermine the power of the applications or the tech that they have available to them in order to add more value if they also have the ability to operate without them. Okay. So if we are going on a road trip with a family and you want to follow a traditional map, that's all great. They need to understand how to even read a map or, use a compass for that matter. It's really important. But between a grown adult and them, the person who's probably more receptive to finding that quick solution on an app is going to be them, because they were born into it. It's integrated in their, hardwired in their brains.
Yeah,
And we can't
absolutely.
discredit them for that. That's my point.
No, that's absolutely
yeah.
right. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's not their fault, but this
Yeah.
is what sets me thinking: are we really evolving forward as human beings, or are we regressing with the technology coming in? Coming to the second part of my question is, you mentioned that you would rather than have a coaching session with a parent, and now this is a question which is a general question, need not be answered as a coach, but as a parent also, or
Mm.
maybe. So, if you were to take off this coaching hat and advise the parent of today, how should they evolve? What would you suggest them to do to have a better connect with the younger generation, to help them
Commu-
emotionally?
yeah. Communication. It's such a simple word. It can do wonders. It's the most underrated skill that you can have. And it doesn't start at 13 or 11. It starts at 3 and 2 and 4. Because if you know the formative years of a child up until, so from 0 to about 4, they are 100% dependent on their figures of authority. That's the parent and whoever's directly involved in their caretaking and raising them. So that's fairly easy to build a nurturing bond with that child. After that, they start to look outside and the stimulus grows, and even till maybe about 10, 11, it's still mom and dad they turn to. They'll go out and they'll see what's there. They want to take a few risks, and that's also fine, but then they'll come back, right? Now, after puberty, they are discovering lots of different things, amongst which their body is changing as well. So they want answers outside of what they see with their mom and dad, because their mom and dad don't have those answers, or at least they think they don't, because that change is happening only to them. Mama, papa are not feeling that change, so they don't understand me. My parents don't understand me. That's such a cliched thing that you hear with so many kids. Now, that is the question I invite parents to answer. When does that understanding of what your child is going through begin? Okay, so I'll give you a very quotidian example. A girl who is 12, 13, one of her biggest worries is maybe her acne. It's starting to develop on her face, and she's having trouble coming to terms with it. Identity crisis. Oh my God, like what's happening to me? And she's trying to fit in. So there is that start of this crisis. And let's not forget, their limbic system is only going to do very basic things like fight or flight. It's very hard for them to come back to neutral unless you give them the right tools. As a mom or even a dad, we're being equal here. The ideal scenario would be, I really understand what you're going through. I don't feel it in me because I've been, maybe I never went through it. Okay. But I want to try and understand how it makes you feel. Tell me, what does it make you feel? And that's the first question that opens communication. Oh, but I just need help. I want this to go. Okay. Let's look for help. Before that child has already taken help from going to, say, a beauty store like Sephora, where they're going to try to market that girl into buying some expensive cream with horrendous number of chemicals. But because it's marketing, and there are products out there, I'm afraid to say, that are being marketed for 10, 12-year-old girls targeted at their acne, but they contain ingredients which are lethal. Now, that mother has two choices. She knows that's not good for my kid. Also, it costs an arm and a leg. I cannot afford that. Honey, I understand what you need. Why don't we look at other options first? And then we can always come back and reassess what this actually means to spend money on a cream of this kind. Let's go to a doctor. However, there are so many parents who think, oh, it's just acne. It's another problem. She'll get over it because everybody has acne. It's passing. Don't worry, darling. You'll be fine. You have to be strong. Come on, let's just wash your face with soap and water. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Yeah, she's going to be fine. But what happens between not being fine and being fine? Right? So communication, that is the very beginning of you either, getting closer to your kid or distancing away from them for the future. It's a long game.
Yeah.
That's where trust is developed as well. My mom understands me, so I will go to her when I have some other new problem in the future, a boy problem. I don't know. I lied to my best friend problem. I feel terrible, but I don't know who to tell. I cheated on my exam problem. I can't tell mom and dad. It's going to break their hearts. Those are real problems that kids go through. And coming back to your question, Shrish, communication, keep it open, you know, and they won't come to you at dinner time and tell you stuff. No. They'll come at night when you're in bed, almost midnight. Mom is probably going through her own perimenopause and she's like, I need to go to bed because my rest is so important. And her 14-year-old daughter will come into the room and say, I want to speak now. And she'll just plonk herself on the bed. You have to listen. The doors have been opened wide. Listen at that moment. Don't say, oh, can we talk about this tomorrow? Because her window is open now. She's a teenager. She will go to bed at 2 a.m., not at 10 p.m.
And I think that the highlight of what you're saying is to not be dismissive of their needs, to
Yeah.
attend to it at the right time. And like we say for adults, right? Like adulting means you have access to resources. That's when we are able to adult in a proper way.
Yeah.
When you're saying communication, what I understand is that communication then becomes that resource, the step towards them going for the right kind of resource.
Yeah. Exactly. And communication doesn't work only with words. It's also picking up on cues that they are giving you with their body language. They won't speak. Most teenagers will be, okay, yes, fine, sure. Those are that's their language. Or today, maybe they'll say calm, aura, vibes. It's a whole other language, right? But you, as a parent, know your child. Obviously, you know them. You have raised them. So if you notice that they're a bit more quieter than usual, the only thing you can do is knock on their door in their room and say, I'm here if you need to talk about something. So know the boundary, just the right amount of space. They may need the space to formulate what they actually want to tell you before they tell you. Because for them, overthinking is a part of their DNA until they're about 17, 18 years old. So what does overthinking make us do? 100 times we'll think, how do I say what I want to say? They need space for that. So as simple as, hey, I'm here if you want to have a chat. I noticed that you're a little bit more reflective. In case you want to have a chat, I'm right next door. A lot of parents say, oh, but I don't know what to say to them, so I'll just go and do my own thing. And it's okay, they're independent enough to be left at home alone. Nothing will happen. It's safe, and arguably so today that the homes are safe. You can leave a 14, 15-year-old home alone. And a lot of people do it. But you know what the difference is? When the teenager knows you are at home, in the kitchen, in your room, in the living room, or on the phone to somebody, they know, oh, mom is there. And you never know. In that window of 3 hours, something will come over their minds. Will be like, hey, do you have a minute? Can I chat to you? And that's your moment. But if you're not home, you've lost your window.
I'm just curious here. So a lot of times, coaching, as we already talked about it, it's established that there is more support needed in different forms for teenagers and young adults today than ever before. Uh, but of course, they don't realize it, right? Like they do not understand they need coaching or some external support. Um, what are teachers and parents missing here, and how can they kind of play that part where they bring in support? for the children?
So, this is a very good question. And I'm so glad you asked me, Roshni, because I've been working on this for the last 5 to 6 months actively in a school where I've discovered some mind-blowing discoveries, and it's been fascinating. I started a pro bono in January in a public school here in Catalonia, in Barcelona, where I offered 20 students from years 12 and 13, respectively, 10 from each, 4 sessions each of one-on-one coaching. The program was offered in a voluntary manner, not forced. Now, this was key because, as you know, as coaches, you cannot coach somebody who's not coachable. The invitation must come from within to say, yeah, okay, I want to give this a try, right? So, firstly, voluntary. Within the first 24 hours of the list going up, because you had to write your name down, thankfully, it was overbooked. So there was a waiting list. So that was a good thing. I was like, oh, that's promising. Okay. I started. Now, what did I discover? Those kids came in, and the way it was, let's say, packaged and sold to them was, here's somebody who's going to give you some time for you to talk about anything you want in a safe, trusting environment, which will not be relayed back to your mom and dad. The only thing we will do is have a contractual agreement, because that is part of coaching, where parent and sponsor being the school, and client is the agent, so the student and the coach. 4 parties are agreeing on this engagement for 4 sessions. Beyond that, it's a completely confidential space. You can use it to your discretion as in how you wish to talk about something academic, something personal. And, that's the way it was packaged to them. I appreciated the simplicity from the school's end, because I did brief them on, please don't make this sound complicated. And please make sure they know this is not therapy. This is not psychology. This is not counseling. This is just a space for them to feel safe and have a chat. Literally, that's how I sold it, as in presented it to them. So that was number 2. What I found was, once they finished their first session, the most prominent thing that was coming out of all these sessions was, I really appreciated this hour because it helped me to put some order to my thoughts. Now, how wonderful is that? When you have all these jumbled thoughts in your mind, even as grown-ups, we wake up sometimes thinking your head is all over the place, or you've woken up on the wrong foot. And suddenly you have this 1 hour with somebody who helps you to put order. That's all they got from session 1, like a vast majority. Then, rippling effect. And I think this will answer your question. How do they know they need coaching? Word of mouth. That teenager went and told his friend, hey, you know what? This woman who came in, she's good. I'm really clear about this one issue that I was having a problem understanding. And so the next week, the teacher came to me and she said, we have a few students who are pushing on this and they want to do it too. I said, I love that. Obviously, I have a limit. I've got myself, with these 20. I said, if any of the 20 drops out, because there was a possibility of that happening too, right? I'm not going to assume that all 20 are going to come in and all 20 are going to do that for. And surely enough, we had 2 out of the 20 who after their first session, they were reluctant, but I observed it as a coach. I said, hey, you know what? Your body language is telling me that you're not here. Do you want to be here? Simple question. I said, there's no obligation. Remember, this was a voluntary process. So as much as you have signed up for this, you have every right to change your mind. Think about it, get back to your teacher, and I'll get the message. She wrote back to me the next day and said, hey, these 2 girls have decided that it's not something they want to pursue. I said, fantastic. I was actually happy because I did not want to coach somebody who doesn't want to get coached. So what does that do? It opens 2 empty slots. And so we had 2 more come in who were delighted because they'd heard from their friend that this is something that can be useful to them. So what do I learn from this whole experience? We have to put coaching in schools more because it's a neutral space. Why is it neutral? There's no parent behind you as a third voice saying, hey, what do you do? Tell me about it. I'm paying for this, you know. There's no one paying for this. It's a neutral process. And number 2, whose validation do they want at that age? Their friends. So what better marketeer than the actual friend telling them, bro, go get some coaching.
I can see
And it's
that
a
this kind,
it's a
yeah,
movement. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a movement.
I can see that this is kind of initiating the inner leader within uh,
Yes.
the teenager. And I know you
Yeah,
work with leadership too. So that is a wonderful overlap, or a wonderful starting point, rather, for children to, you know, become leaders of their own lives.
absolutely. You couldn't have said it better. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation we are having, Goldie. But since we are running out of time, I would like our viewers, our listeners, to understand what is the road forward for you as a coach, as a mentor, as a speaker. What would you? How are you taking this process forward?
Uh, just to understand your question in terms of what are my next personal
Yeah.
steps. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the future looks promising, I think, in many ways for me, because I recognize there is a very large movement that I still have to create lots of ripples for. I would love to envision coaching becoming a democratic opportunity for any, teenager who should require it in an educational space, more so because of the so many factors we've spoken about, whether it's the integration of technology, AI, even just giving them the space to use their emotional intelligence on a more human level and not so much online. That's a very much need of the hour, I feel. And so that's where I think a lot of my investment will go personally. Alongside, I've obviously been in the craft for 10 years, but there's always learning. It's one of my values, and I continue to want to evolve as a coach. I am on the journey to becoming MCC, which is the master coach credential. And I think once I can get that, I would love to mentor more, and maybe mentor other coaches to become teenager coaches. There's a need for that niche as well. I have not seen it grow as exponentially as leadership coaching. It's coming. It's up and coming. Roshni, you know this. We have many now who are keen, but I also, and I have to say this out loud, the difference between teenage coaching and leadership coaching is that you can fall into this trap of becoming a teacher to the client as a coach purely because of the unsaid power dynamics that can exist in a space. And that is something that unfortunately discourages a lot of kids from doing coaching because they see that the session turns into another session with a teacher, but this is a lot more intense because it's one-on-one. And they like, I didn't sign up for this, you know? So that awareness is also a part of my endeavor to promote more what exactly is teenager coaching versus leadership coaching, the differences, the nuances, the way you have to really manage the agent on an equal par, working from the competencies that ICF has so beautifully always stated to us, but putting a lot more spotlight on presence, rapport, creating trust and safety. Yeah.
if there's one message that comes to your mind that schools or the system that you were talking about initially, right? The parents, the educators, one message that they could take uh, to handle or partner with this age group better, what would that message be?
I mean, I think it's been said implicitly a couple of times here. Unplugged social learning. So have more conversations. Water cool. So you know what? I'm going to parallel this with when you're in a company working and you've just entered and you're like low level management trying to create belonging with your peers. What are the most powerful conversations that we can have? The water cooler ones, right? Where we're just casually having a catch up or let's have a coffee. What happens in those conversations? Rapport is built. You feel like you belong. And I would encourage schools to do the same. Pull out that child from the corridor and say, hey, how's it going? you know I noticed, observe. Say, I noticed you were a little bit more quiet in class. Is something on your mind? Because no kid will want to be pointed out in class. Even we as adults don't ever want to be pointed out in the boardroom. But when your manager has that capacity to come to you on the side and say, do you have 10 minutes? Should we have a coffee? Tell me what's happening. What are you struggling with? What's going well? Those questions, those coaching questions. I think that's what I'm encouraging even teachers to do. Become more coaching related rather than teacher related. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Goldie. And the biggest takeaway for me as a parent, as I listen to you, is communication is the key. And also, what makes it important is that the adult should help the understand that the child, though has a lot of information available, easily available information, they don't have the capacity to process it right now.
Yeah.
And it's their duty that they not only help the child process that information properly, but also discern what is actually the right information and the wrong information. Help the child with that. And that is the biggest learning I got from the conversation of today. Thank you so much. And thank you, Roshni, you for a fabulous co-host. And we had a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Goldie, so much. It was really insightful. I'm sure to a lot of listeners, there is so much to take away. And I think even to just start thinking in this direction of what Shirish was also pulling out from the conversation, that, communication and becoming that resource person when the child needs you, um, connecting in that moment when they need you rather than going to them when you need to talk. So these are some very, very nuanced but very important um, conversation starters, thinking, just a thought starter, I would say, for parents and educators. And thank you so much for this conversation. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people.
What can I say? Thank you. Firstly, thank you to both of you. Your ability to question me and extract what I wanted to say was remarkable. So that's fabulous. It's been a space where I feel we can have more of these conversations because there are so many relevant topics that parents are probably thinking about. And it's thanks to your podcast that we can have and share those topics. And I often feel like when we listen to a podcast, we're a part of it also as a listener, because people are talking and you're listening, and you sometimes say, oh, and I said this. No, I didn't say anything, I was just listening. But you genuinely feel like you're a part of the conversation. And that's what it felt like for me. For a moment I would just step back and think, if I was a parent listening, I would love to listen to Roshni and Shrish again and again and again, because they really bring out the right topics that all parents are thinking inside their hearts. So please keep doing this. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Goldie.
you.